are you today? Um, so yeah, I am running a little bit late because I just forgot like what was happening and I got distracted doing other things, but you're here now. So I want to talk about basically comparing Alexander Graham Bell's memoir upon the formation of the deaf variety of the human race and his address to the deaf on marriage, to the deaf, DEAF. Captioners are off. No. Okay. To what I am processing with FamilySearch.org and their family tree, if that makes sense. So, um, that's what we're gonna be looking at today. I have a bunch of sources on FamilySearch.org and the organization behind it and what it's about pulled up. And we're going to go through more in detail all of those sources. So, first, excuse me, coughing, excuse me. Okay, so, little Tommy chonged out over here. But, okay, so I want to sum up the memoir and the speech that Alexander Graham Bell gave about um, researching families and how he saw families. And then we're going to look at all of these sources I have on FamilySearch.org, and we're going to spend most of the live going through all of those sources and focusing on them because I've already done a lot of material on Alexander Graham Bell and on these two things that he wrote, and that is linked in the description of this video if you want to check all of that out. I do think in general having the context of those lives that I did previously on Alexander Graham Bell, particularly with the memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. It's memoir upon the formation, deaf variety, DEAF. You know what? Screw the captioner. It's all linked in the description. So, marriage and address to the deaf is the other. So, those two things that AGB wrote are what we're going to be looking at and comparing it to. So, yeah, having that context is important. If you haven't, if you don't know about that, I kind of do recommend maybe pausing this live, checking that shit out, and going through that before continuing. But if you do know a little bit about this shit, or if you just want to do that later, you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna stick with here now and process that shit later. That's totally cool too. But anywho, all right, we're gonna do the damn thing now. I'm an overthinker, so like I said, we're gonna go over the Alexander Graham Bell shit. I'm gonna summarize that a little bit. We're gonna go into the sources, and then we're gonna talk about all that we're gonna discuss. So. Hi, my name is Lexi, also known as and doing business as Deaf Child. In 2022, my company was listed as number 14 Best Louisiana Events Companies and Startups. I have been doing business as Deaf Child since 2013. I have my Bachelor of Science in Music and History Studies and Business Administration, and deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. And I've got about 50 certifications in marketing and sales that you can find at NolaDeafChild.com. I accidentally closed out my OBS and then pulled it back up. Well, it looks like everything is working just fine, but if anything got fucked up during my intro, that's what happened. But yeah, alright, so the main focus in regards to Alexander Graham Bell that I really want to highlight and harp on when reflecting in the context of FamilySearch.org is chapter 4. Because in chapter 4, particularly, the whole rest of both materials we're discussing give a broader context for all of the red flags regarding this. But in chapter 4, particularly, you can see how Alexander Graham Bell outlines and builds and discusses family trees regarding deaf families in he was using family trees to uh, come up with methods to eradicate deafness. And so, um, to eradicate DEAFNESS. Um, so yeah, fucking. Let's see. Yeah, no. Okay. But the whole fucking thing about the memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race, the whole summary, TLDR, is he was basically fear mongering, trying to convince hearing people that it is possible deaf people could continue existing. Here's all of the ways it's possible, and here's what we need to do to stop it. And he was making lists of deaf family names, and he was making lists of how many deaf people, whether or not they're hearing or deaf in the family. He was making whole family trees about us, um, and he was coming up with stats on like who was what, and he was really going into detail about the lineages and our names as well. And so like he was counting how many times our names occurred within families and things like that. So there was just a lot to be, worried about there regarding his use of family trees as logic to eradicate deafness in terms of genocide. We'll put that into marriage and address to death, what's happening now, where, well, next, rather, not now, this is 100 years ago, but a couple hundred years ago, but, what's happening with this, where after that, after he wrote this thing where he's talking about this is what we need to do to prevent deaf people from producing. He wrote this address to the deaf, and he was like, I never said I cared about you guys getting married. I'm just trying to stop you guys from having kids. And he was like, it would be a calamity if you had kids. And that was the whole bringing it back to the memoir. He said, um, those who believe as I do that the production of a defective race of human beings would be a great calamity to the world will examine carefully the causes that lead to the intermarriages of the deaf with the object of applying a remedy. Um, so that was like, the whole fucking point of where he was going with tracking all of this, right? Um, and he wanted to make deaf people as hearing as possible. And so these two books are extremely relevant to what we're going to be talking about next. Okay, well, now I want to show you guys some other things in history, and then I did not bring up sources on this other thing that this is reminding me of regarding, like, well, it could remind me of a lot of things now, but I want to, as we move through these sources, I really think it's important to reflect on how these sources are parallel to current, not only current events, but past events too. But there, I'm really screaming with some current event parallels and reflections in the sources we're going to be seeing. Um, so I do have a mix of sources in here. Some sources I feel more accurately represent history in that I'm going to show, while other sources I feel show a very fucked up version of the history. But because it is what is written and put out there, I do have some commentary and reaction, and I do think it shows some evidence of what I am discussing. So I don't agree with all of the sources that I mean, this is general. I don't agree with all the sources that show on my channel, and I'm pretty sure I make that pretty fucking clear when I'm talking about the damn things. But in case that wasn't clear, like, let me make sure that's clear. So, well, what is FamilySearch.org? First of all, that might be a good question. A lot of people don't know. So when you go to FamilySearch.org, you find the theory is you log in and you enter your parents' information, your grandparents' information, and from there you're able to use what records and public information is available to build your family tree uh, from what information is available in order to fucking figure out your ancestry or just document or understand your lineage and your family's role in society. Um, so that is the theory behind it. That's what it is promoted as and marketed for. Now, the purpose of this live is to question if that surface level explanation and idea and theory and promotion and marketing of what this is what it actually is. And as we go through the sources and reflect on history, I think you're going to see what I'm talking about. Um, so, it does have sources, but anybody can enter anything at the same time. So there is a mix in here. Like, it can be accurate. It can be a good source because it's had so many different people. So there is good information in here, but there's also bad information in here. Just like any other place on the internet, you know? Um, so I find with my own lineage, there are certain things within my own lineage I can confirm. There are guaranteed records, document, evidence. Like this is I know this. This is not disputed to me. Whereas others, there are reasons to question some of the sources given. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't want to give specifics until I better understand my family history and the way I should be discussing that. But yeah, but in general, if you do your own family research, you're going to see how the sources available to you can fluctuate in the validity. Um, so they have a variety of genealogical resources and things that you can look up. So let's, on their about page, I thought we could read that a little bit and just, think about how are they marketing themselves and what is their quote unquote, what is the idea behind, I don't want to say their intention because I don't know their intention, right? That's what I'm questioning. And but what is the message they are putting out there as to what they're about is what we're going to read here. To better understand what are they presenting themselves as. So, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints provides family search free of charge to everyone, regardless of tradition, culture, or religious affiliation. Family search resources help millions of people around the world discover their heritage and connect with family members. That is what their about page says. Okay. They say the founding of Family Search is in 1894 with the Genealogical Society of Utah, founded to help church members trace their family trees. We're going to reflect on this and we're going to come back to it because I have a theory and I want to show some sources before I say that theory so I don't feel as crazy. Like, when I say, like, I feel like some people, when I say my theory, they're gonna be like, hell yeah, like, that's for sure, that's definitely probably. Some people are gonna be like, bitch, what? So we're just gonna see. But, okay, so, in 1924, they developed and grew to where they recognized that they had users from 200, that doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Something is wrong with this information. I am, reacting without having read this specific piece before. And it says 1924, which started locally, supporting a handful of languages nearly 100 years ago, has blossomed into a website that has users from 238 countries. So if you started in 1894, what is the significance of this 1924 number in that context is what I don't fucking get. Maybe that's when they first branched to multiple languages. I don't know, because the internet fucking didn't exist then. So this doesn't make sense, okay, bitches? Um, so I guess research help in multiple languages started in 1924 because on the next slide it says microfilming starts 1938. So if that format was the same, that would make sense. All right. And then it says they're talking about how filming of paper documents began in church and government archives. A microfilm was used until 2002 when capture became 100% digital. And then it says first local family history centers from 1964. The first local family history center opened. It currently provides in-person research to more than 5,000 locations. The website went live in 1999, apparently. And it's one of the most popular websites on the internet. The first searchable records came in here in 2002, I believe. It says the 1880 census listing the United States residents in 1880 becomes the first publicly searchable record collection on Family Search. And then they had a Roots Tech conference in 2011. Really growing over here. By 2013, they had 1 billion indexed records. Damn. 5 years later, they crossed 2 billion. That is very rapid growth, but that does align with the growth of the internet and the digital space, you know. Um, and then by 2014, 1 billion historical records, and they published its 1 billionth image of a historical record in 2014, and those are the records that we can use to learn the details of our family history. Okay. I have skim and scanned some of the articles before, but I didn't specifically read all of them. But I just feel like I want to keep in mind because we're gonna read about the colonization of the United States as it was tied to the Church of Latter-day Saints. So I kind of want to keep in mind the founding of Family Search in relation to that. Okay, so moving on, the FamilySearch.org has published from the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a broad overview of their history, you know. And I thought we could like kind of just go through that real quick. Um, but I'm really gonna just kind of like read through the timeline. I'm not gonna read through the entire there's more information on this page, but I just want to read through this timeline. So these are events in church history that affected the church members and their record keeping. So in 1830, Joseph Smith organized the first church in Fayette, New York. And Samuel Smith was called as the first missionary. In 1831, the first church settlements were started in Kirtland, Ohio, and Jackson County, Missouri. Who gives a shit, but in 1836, the Kirtland Temple was dedicated. So in 1837, the first foreign mission was opened in the British Isles. Does that really count as foreign if you're the same fucking people? In 1838 to 1839, most church officers and members left Kirtland. Others were forced out of Missouri. Members settled, I think that's Nauvoo. I apologize if I said that wrong. Nauvoo, Illinois. In 1840, they were doing some baptisms in the Mississippi River. And the first company of saints went from Liverpool, England, bound from the United States. In 1841, the first sealings to spouse were performed for living couples. Does that mean like legal marriage? Like, I don't know. In 1842, the first endowments were performed for living people. 1844, Joseph Smith was martyred. 1846, the Nauvoo temple was dedicated, and the living endowments and sealings to spouse performed here, and living sealings to parents were also performed. In 1846 to 1847, the Saints were forced to leave Nauvoo and began migrating through the west. The Mormon battalion was commissioned to serve in the Mexican War. 1849. The Perpetual Immigrating Fund was started to help poor saints move to Utah. 1850 to 1900. Major colonization efforts established many towns in Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Nevada, California, Wyoming, Mexico, and Canada. 1850. Missionary work began in France, Italy, Switzerland, and the Scandinavian countries. In 1852, Brigham Young encouraged the saints in Iowa to migrate to Utah. The Perpetual Immigrating Fund was extended to help poor saints immigrating from other countries. The first Scandinavian converts immigrated to Zion. The church announced the doctrine of plural marriage. Okay, let's let this marinate. Let's let this sink in. Where is Zion? Immigrated to Zion in 1852. According to here, where is Zion? Is it what? Isn't this confusing? Isn't this confusing? Where is Zion? Because are you saying they went to like? Because the Zionists are claiming Palestine. So it's just evidence that before the Zionists were claiming Palestine, they were trying to claim, America under Zionism. Does that just mean coming into the church? Does that mean being... I need a Mormon or an ex-Mormon to tell me if Zion refers to the locality of the country or the act of being a Mormon. You know what the fuck I mean? Like, if you go to church, maybe you come to Zion. Is that anywhere a church is? Is that what the fuck that means? It's just like it's just, what is that doctrine that the British were using and a bunch of white people were using to colonize, claiming that they had the divine right, right? What the fuck was that? Like, was that Magna Carta? Oh, so it refers to Jerusalem, according to Wikipedia, the city of God. So they refer, okay, this Mormon wiki says that they use it to refer to the actual place where Zionic society exists, the people and the spiritual... I'm not clicking that shit, something. And what Zion means to Mormons, my bad, God's kingdom on earth. Okay, we're going to pull up this source here and use it. Let's bring you over here. According to this little bloggy blog, it says Zion and Mormon history, an American promised land. Isn't this interesting? And so this is how FamilySearch.org was founded, on the eradication of Native people from quote unquote America. Okay, I think that's interesting. And I think that's interesting. So they go wipe off the old families here, and then they decide they're going to establish who they decide was here in their database. Are we processing this? Are we processing today? Okay, let me know if we have questions. Okie dokie. Back to our fucking timeline. No, are we on fire? Okay. So, 1853, the first German converts immigrated to quote-unquote Zion. 1855 to 1889, the Endowment House opened in Salt Lake City. Living endowments in the ceilings to spouse, proxy, and living were performed there. 1856 to 1857, members were admonished to reform their lives and rededicate themselves to the Lord. Many members were rebaptized. 1857 to 1858, 30,000 members from northern Utah moved south into Utah County due to the coming of Johnston's army. United States troops under Colonel Johnston arrived and established Camp Floyd. Many members moved back to their homes in northern Utah, but others made permanent homes in central Utah. 1869. The Transcontinental Railroad was completed. The railroad increased the migration of members to Utah and church colonization throughout the West. 1877. The St. George Temple was dedicated, and the first proxy endowments were performed. Living sealings to parents were again performed. The first proxy sealings to parents were performed here. Brigham Young reorganized the 70s priesthood organizations throughout the church. Many members renewed their continence and were rebaptized. New membership forms are designed to record the rebaptism and reconfirmation dates. 1879. Due to the controversy over polygamy, the Secretary of State of the United States urged European governments to halt the flow of church immigrants. 1884 to 1887. Polygamists were persecuted intensely by the federal government. To avoid this, many saints moved to Mexico and Canada. The United States government confiscated the money for the Perpetual Immigrating Fund, which also restricted church immigration. Utah counties began recording marriages. 1890. President Wilford Woodruff issued the manifesto, officially stopping new plural marriages among the states in the United States. 1894. President Woodruff received a revelation clarifying that children should be sealed to their parents instead of church leaders. 1895. The first stakes outside the United States were organized in Alberta, Canada, and Juarez, Mexico. Utah counties began keeping birth and death records. 1898. Leaders of the church began discouraging immigration. 1905. The state of Utah began recording births and deaths. 1914. The first church census was conducted to identify members. Starting in 1920, censuses were taken every 5 years until 1960, except in 1945 due to World War II. 1918 through 1919, weekly services were not held in many areas due to the worldwide flu epidemic. The April 1919, that's literally about 100 years, that's interesting. The April 1919 General Conference was also delayed until June 1919. Many blessings and baptisms were delayed. 1924. The first of the 3 and 4 generation programs began. Members submitted family group records, and they were placed in the patron section of the family group records collection. Okay, so I kind of want to like, right here, I forgot to come back to this. Right here it says 1898, leaders of the church began discouraging immigration. And it's interesting. 1894, Family Search was founded. Okay. Church members traced their family trees. So is that because they were having so many kids, they were trying to keep up with whose kid was who? They're like, wait a minute, who was your dad again? I don't know. That is interesting. Because I wonder what was their logic for why we need to trace your family tree if was it their whole thing under polygamy where they felt like the parents shouldn't control the kids and the leader of the church would control the kids? You know what I mean? Like I feel like those are also conflicting ideas. Why does the family tree matter if the church is the head of the state? The family or something. You know, not that I agree with that concept. I just think that their logic doesn't make sense to me. Okay. But sorry. Let's come back here. 1941, they began a deceased members file. In 1942, the family group record forms were used to submit names for temple work. In 1969, the new computerized name processing required individual entry and marriage entry forms to clear names for temple work. This is the beginning of the file that became the ordinance index. This is fucking insane. 1978, every worthy male could hold the priesthood and participate in temple ordinances. 1979, the church began collecting pedigree charts and family group records for the ancestral file. 1981, the Salt Lake Temple's recording process was computerized. Most temples are converted to the new computerized temple recording system over the next 10 years. 1990, Family Search was released. 1991, the Temple Ready computer program made it possible for members to clear their own names for temple work. 1997, the Ordinance Index was created from the International Genealogical Index. In 1998, the family name system was started in the English-speaking temples. This allows temple patrons to keep track of their own temple submission entries on colored cards. In 1999, the Family Search Internet Genealogy Service started. The first pedigree resource file names were submitted over the internet, websites added, and collaboration lists started. And again, this is what FamilySearch.org is publishing as events in church history that affected church members and their record keeping. Okay. I just feel like this is them admitting, essentially, that FamilySearch.org is based on colonialism, that FamilySearch.org is deeply tied into every facet of their religion. That is what I'm taking this as. Okay. So, an overview of Latter-day Saint colonization. So we'll do a little overview, and then we're also going to look at a few specific examples as well. Because as we just saw, they've colonized a lot of places. So we could be here all day if we talked about everywhere they've colonized. But, you know. Okay. So they are advertising this message as the purpose to be to trace your ancestors' movements to help determine their origins. All right, which I really think is a very interesting interesting frame of mind. They're just like, look, yeah, I know we killed the actual people who belong here and took their land and shit, but trust me, I'm gonna tell you where you're really from. That's what this fucking website is, I guess. Like, what the hell? And it's like the best thing we have to go on, I guess, because what other platform out there is that has compiled all of our records like this? Like, and so this is like, I didn't want to sign up for FamilySearch.org for all of the reasons I'm discussing in the live and more, but um I ended up signing up for it anyway for my own family tree because I was like, you know what? If they've got access to all this information and they're tracking all this data on me anyway, I might as well fucking see what the fuck it says, you know? So that's how I got there. Um, but fucking yeah. So we already just discussed the history of church settlements that they have here, and skimming and scanning, it looks like everything I just fucking talked about, so I'm not rereading that. Um, they also have some maps here regarding their settlements in the western United States, um, with the areas we discussed before, as well as in Mexico and Canada. So, fucking yeah, the main area in United States, or in America rather, because not just in the United States, like, and the whole of America is a colonial construct, so they really fucked with Mexico, a little bit of Mexico, a little bit of Canada, and a bit of the Western U.S. are like the main areas where FamilySearch.org, I feel, is directly tied to some of the eradication in native people, you know? Um, and I'm discussing this because it does bring me to question even more so the validity of their record keeping, given the roots of it. If the roots of it are on oppression, what could the outcome of that be, right? For, I don't know, because my lineage has some very sensitive information in there. And it's like, if that lineage is not true, and, yeah, on a certain level, it could be on a certain level, statistically speaking, there's going to be errors in lineages based on human condition, right? And mistakes. But on another level, I do feel that some of the information we are going through, and especially given and comparing and reflecting on what I'm seeing today and knowing what has happened in the United States throughout history, I feel is um I'm losing my thought. Why do I fucking keep doing this? Hold on. Let me see some shit. What the fuck did I say? Oh yeah. So like, if the lineage were true, like if it were like my type of lineage, for example, I do feel it could be like, what if they are kind of trying to erase native families that are here from the records in order to replace their own records, or in ever order to claim that identity, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's making sense. Like, I do feel it could be possible that some of the records in FamilySearch.org could be fabricated in order to um, give certain people claim or entitlement to the land. And I, I don't have any specific evidence for this, but what I do have, I have a very set of skills. I'm just kidding, and I will kill you and I will find you. No, I'm sorry. Fucking. But what I do have is just like an intuition based on understanding history, based on understanding the different ways genocide was used throughout history, and then looking at the wording of how FamilySearch.org markets themselves, and then comparing that to colonialism, and then reflecting that into current events. It just kind of all comes together like a little puzzle piece as a pattern, you know? I'm seeing patterns for sure. Whether or not I have specific evidence, I feel I have a pattern. Um, but yeah, fucking let's keep going. Where we at? Here we go. So this is from understandingmormonism.org, and it's called History Colonizing. And it talks about how the process of Mormon immigration began in the 1830s and assisted 5,000 European converts in migrating to Illinois. Um, and then in 1846, so we had gotten that that this was common, but we didn't get these numbers before. In 1846, they brought 16,000 people in. Um, by 1890, they had brought in 83,000 Europeans. I never realized that many Europeans came in because of Mormons, you know. Um. So yeah, I'm looking to see. So let's see. What I don't like about this is they're calling the region, they're calling it early development when they really fucked it up and desecrated native landmarks and native villages and communities. So what development? That's not, that's like calling what's happening in Gaza a development. I don't know if I can say that, but I feel like I can. Like, yeah. So then another fucking source that I'm probably not gonna like either is called Mormon Matters. Um, and this one blog says the sun never sets on the Mormon Empire, cultural colonialism. They're talking about the difference between European and American colonialism, but I don't really see their point because, first of all, I don't understand what the fuck they're trying to say. And this article is linked in the description for anybody who wants to go through and read it themselves for the Mormon Matter ones because I just don't have it in me to process or read this right now. But I'm still gonna fucking talk about it because what they're trying to create some type of difference between European and American politics regarding colonialism, but I perceive them as one and the same. Because America was colonized by Europeans. You know what the fuck I mean? Like, there's no difference. Like, to me, that, like, because in regards to the Mormon church and Mormon colonies, you know what I'm saying? Like, that, those are Europeans colonizing America. That's not, to act like America, that there's a difference would be to kind of erase the original people here in my head. Um, so this whole point of this article is like they are saying what happens in the cycle of colonialism, and then they basically say Well, eventually people break within the colonizing group, or there could be guilt and repatriation. I don't really like their points here. Fucking, and then they make a third option about how colonization is a human tendency so ingrained it's inevitable. I don't like it. I just feel like all of this is just looking for an excuse to justify their shitty actions. Just, I can't even, like, I'm having a hard time reading that because I'm just like, you suck. Okay. So then the Library of Congress posted something called Religious Flight and Migration Mormons. And it was an essay published in 2000 as part of an original Meeting of Frontiers website. Um, and this is one on which they're comparing the story of Mormon settlement in the United States to Russian religious minorities in Russia. I don't know enough about Russia to know what the fuck they're even talking about, though, to be honest. So that's something I'll have to educate myself on. But basically, John Smith is trying to claim religious persecution, was running around colonizing, and basically claiming religious persecution and using that claim in order to colonize, in my opinion. Um, where are we seeing that happen again? And from what I'm reading in these sources, they're talking about, I can't remember which one was talking about it's paramount for Zionism, for them to sustain on their own and to not have outside help. Um, and so I do think it's interesting that they had conflicts with the other colonizers because they were very individualistic and they only wanted to share and use resources among themselves. I think that's interesting. So this other source from Mormon Wiki has an excerpt page thing on colonization of the West, and it again kind of reiterates everything that we have discussed. And let's see. And it also talks a bit more of what I was talking about, how they allocated resources and how their perception of allocation of resources was tied into the way they colonized the U.S. And I think that is interesting because it's something that I've just learned about in anti-racism work before from the perspective of other people, but it's never something that I've seen white people actually admit to. I mean, I'm white, but what I'm trying to say. Like, I've never seen anyone admit to this. And not only are they admitting to it, they seem to be quite proud of it. Like, from what I'm getting from the vibe, talking about self-sufficiency and shit. What the fuck? How is it self-sufficiency if you had to kill somebody to take their shit? That's not self-sufficient, now is it? So you exploited someone. Since when is exploitation self-sufficiency? That's what. Hmm. I don't know. All right. And then the Church of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or whatever. Fuck. So they have a thing on their website called Pioneer Settlements. And here they say Joseph Smith saw potential for Latter-day Saints to establish and expand Zion in reference to the North American West with the interest of expanding the United States. And that is the basis on which Western colonial expansion occurred. this shit, man. What the fuck? So, yeah. Fucking. So, the it's just a different brand of Zionism. You know what I mean? Um, on their site, though, they put the scale and impact of Latter-day Saint settlements in the area tragically displaced native groups from their homelands. That is, they blame the displacement of native groups on the scale and impact of the settlements. No, I mean, sure, it didn't help, but it's not like the problem was that a settlement was there, that there was all of a sudden buildings and shit. I mean, yeah, that did cause problem because of the way white people built cities and infrastructure. Yeah, that does cause a lot of problems within the environment, but that wasn't like, that's not what tragically displaced native people. You know what the fuck I'm saying? The white people, as white people, colonizers, the Latter-day Saints themselves are who tragically displaced the like. There's no account. They even worded it in a way to where they admit it happened, but they don't take accountability for it. In a way, I feel, with the verdict, and so it's a reflection of white people. Um, but yeah, fucking. So let's talk about some colonies in Mexico. Um, in 1882, the U.S. Congress passed an act which gave power to federal marshals to arrest, imprison, and fine the the bitches for plural marriages. So they went to Mexico because they felt violated. Um, and their president, who I am assuming is someone who's another colonizer from Spain. And I don't know shit about this dude, but I can just assume here, was trying to help them colonize vacant land in Mexico, as they admit. So this is how they're trying to expand and create and build their idea of Zion. And we're going to come back to Zion. Okay. So this next is from a scholar's archive. Oops. Oh, it brings me the whole fucking thing. I didn't know it did that. Huh? Okay, so this is called Mormon Colonization in the San Luis Valley. Let's go look at the. I'm just gonna read the abstract. If you click, so from the link in the description of the video, if you click the title of it, it takes you to the full article. But I'm just gonna go over the abstract real quick. So in the late 1870s, missionary successes in the southern states prompted the search for a location which the new converts could migrate and establish their homes among the saints in Zion. The area eventually decided upon for the location of the southern converts was the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. Elder John Morgan, the most prominent figure in the early missionary work in the South, was given a leading role in bringing southern converts to the settlements which were to be established in the San Luis Valley. The initial settlements of the saints in the valley took place in the spring of 1878, and regular spring and fall migrations from the south added to their numbers for a full decade. Families of saints from Utah, experienced in irrigation methods and the ways of the frontier, and firmly rooted in their knowledge of and devotion to gospel principles, were called to assist in the colonization of the valley. Manasseh was the first town to be established by the Saints in 1879. As the population of church members increased, additional communities were founded in the vicinity around Manasseh, among the Ephraim, Richfield, and Sanford. Further development and expansion continued until circumstances warranted the establishment of a stake organization of the church. In June 1883, the San Luis Stake of Zion was organized, with Silas S. Smith, a cousin of the prophet Joseph, as stake president. Feelings of animosity developed between the Southern converts and those saints who had come from Utah, which was to be a source of much irritation and disunity in the years to follow. The year 1884 in particular was a difficult year for the saints, as false stories circulated by apostate members of the church brought much opposition from non-Mormons and dissension among the membership of the stake. The controversy over polygamy also contributed to the difficulties of the saints. In the years that followed the passage of the Edmunds Act in 1882, the San Luis Valley experienced a notable influx of polygamous families fleeing Utah in search of a place of refuge. The desire for a more remote place of refuge, coupled with population pressures and the attraction of available land, prompted the establishment of several additional settlements in more distant parts of the valley and in New Mexico. Most of these newer communities experienced only a temporary success and were abandoned before the turn of the century. Church organizational development and change paralleled the ups and downs of the colonial endeavor in the valley. Economic and material progress characterized the Mormon settlements, especially in agricultural development. Private and cooperative enterprise experienced only limited success among the saints in the valley. Spiritual progress, while notable, was marred by the occasional reoccurrence of the factional strife between the Southern saints and those from Utah. This strife, superimposed over a dispute regarding the financial management of the Manasseh Cooperative Milling and Manufacture Company, resulted in 1892 in the resignation of stake president Silas S. Smith and the reorganization of the stake presidency. So I'm going to pause here. So processing all of that information, so they preach about hoarding all of the resources as a collective. And I had that commentary about individualism perpetuating from that behavior, and I feel this abstract then showing between the division of the Southern saints and those left in Utah then shows how that then comes into play and manifests in this community. Like they literally manifest their own individualism. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's just finish this. And then it says, a general improvement in social, economic, and religious matters was the trend of the final years of the 19th century. Marked, are you sure? Marked most notably by the visit of Apostle John W. Taylor to the valley in 1897. By 1900, the frontier phase of the Mormon colonization of the valley was completed. The population had reached the leveling off point. Dissension was in steady decline, and the saints looked to the future of the valley with confidence and optimism. It's easy to look in optimism whenever you're the colonizer, I guess. I don't know. Whenever you're the one writing history to make it look good. Okay. So then from WyomingHistory.org, they have, as part of their encyclopedia, a little article about how Mormon colonizers in Wyoming's Bighorn Basin, did their damn thing. And it discusses how from 1847 to 1900, as we've been discussing, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, founded hundreds of settlements throughout Utah and the Intermountain West. And one of the last places that they settled was in the Bighorn Basin of northern Wyoming, which is where they established the towns of Byron and Cowley in the fall of 1900. Oh, I think I smell food. Hey, Sha? Did you go get food?
Yeah, that's what I'm listening to.
Oh, hell yeah, that is great. I can smell that. That is awesome. I'm gonna get some chicken. Thank you, love you. Okay. Fucking. Sorry, where was I? Alright, let's come up over here. So there was already some Mormons there by around 1900, and then they fucking built even more shit up in there. And because shit was being built there, more fucking people decided to go. And it kind of looks like a lot of people go into it for the resources, thinking they put into this community they're going to be taken care of. Okay, so water rights in the river um, were being relinquished to a company, so construction of a canal could proceed because they needed a canal, apparently, um, in order to divert water flow for some farms, and built that put off homes being built. Um, so they were using tents to sleep in, and then they were trying to build a railroad line. And they needed cash for supplies. So the colonists were really excited about the railroad line. They wanted to finish the canal. Um, and then they drew for lots for land they didn't even see. And then they were basically trying to figure out where the fuck to go to get that land that they had bought. Oh, seems like, yeah, they're just creating their own damn problems. Next thing you know, you got some fucking Mormon towns out here. The way that they call this an end of an era, as if it's like the end of an era, to me, that's typically a saying where you are reminiscing about how good something was, right? When you're like, it's the end of an era, that's like, oh man, like my high school days are over or something, right? Like the end of a life, like, but like, yeah, I mean, sure, I guess technically colonialism is an era, but it's not even the end of it. We're still in the era of colonialism. Like, what does this mean in context? I don't know, of finishing settling as a Mormon settler. I don't like it. Okie dokie. And then I am gonna pull up Wikipedia here about the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm not gonna read all of this because we've been discussing all this shit here. Um, but I wanted to pull it up because I do feel like it just kind of summarizes everything that we've been discussing this far. And I think that will be a good segue into my next point here on Zionism as we discuss what are the similarities here. So now that we're processing this, so we've talked about Alexander Graham Bell. We've talked about a bit about Mormons, the history of Mormons, how they colonized in different ways America, and how their colonialism is tied into Zionism, and how all of this is rooted in the way that they built FamilySearch.org and how they use family trees. Okay. So now let's go on to this next point, and that's about Zionism here. And what does Zionism mean? You know what I'm saying? It could be promised land, it could be people, it could be a place, it could be the land of God as they consider it. Um, Now, keep this in mind as well. Mormonism began in 1830 to focus on Zion as place, energized by ideas expressed in the Book of Mormon. When Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon during 1827 to 1830 period, it confirmed the prevalent notion among many Americans in the early 1800s that the American Indians were remnants of the lost tribes of Israel. The book contained the story of God's dealings with two groups of Hebrew peoples who migrated to America by ship sometime before 600 before the Common Era. But the second migration was the more important and made up the core of the account. And then it says, these people, led by a prophet named Lehi and later by his son Nephi, established an advanced and for a time at least righteous civilization in the Americas. The Nephite people's civilization reached its apex when the visit of the resurrected Jesus Christ to America. During his sojourn with the Nephites, Christ taught them his philosophy much more clearly and with less confusion than had been the case in Palestine. Following Christ's visit, the Nephites took part in a 200-year golden age and saw the formation of a utopian society where all respected and cared for those around them. Okay, so this is all based on indigenous erasure. So the whole idea that native people are from the lost tribes of Palestine, the only thing that um, Palestinians and native people have in common are the fact that they're both native people to their area. You know what I mean? They're not the same people. They're different people. I mean, Palestinians are native, but you know what I mean? Like, and I don't like calling Native Americans American Indians, and I don't like saying America because America is a colonial construct. And then there's like 600 tribes in native people, and I don't, so I can't list all 600 tribes. I can't remember them all, to be honest. And um, so I feel bad with the homogenization and detribalization label of either indigenous, American, or um, Indian. I have heard, I've been in community, I know different people feel different ways about each of those terms. I know some people who don't like the term indigenous, some people don't like the term Native American, some people don't like the term Indian. And so I know different people who, for different reasons, prefer to use three of those terms. So some people, they don't like the term Indian because obviously this is not India. But then, if they don't identify with the term Indian, you could lose treaties and rights under the treaties, right? So that's like an argument, double standard that I've seen with the term Indian. With the term Native American, an argument, that I've seen is America is a colonial construct. So some people don't like that, but then some people will use that because just to refer to the geographical location of where they are native to. And then with indigenous, some people don't like the term indigenous because that could mean, by definition, that you were here before colonialism, which could imply that you were colonized. So some people don't like the implication that native people have been colonized because treaties were violated. That doesn't necessarily, you know what I'm saying? Like, just because native people exist in a road of colonialism doesn't necessarily mean they are colonized, right? Um, but then some people do prefer to use the term indigenous because they don't like the term Indian and they don't like the term America for them for those reasons. So I know people, I don't want to offend anybody. I know it may not be my place to speak on those terms. I'm just overthinking because I know people who get offended by each three of those terms. I know people who identify with each three of those terms, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I just, um, in order to discuss, I am going to say Native Americans, if that, uh, for purposes of clarifying and getting through the fucking discussion. I apologize. We're working on myself here, but I think all of this um, shows cultural genocide and indigenous erasure. You know what I mean? Um, and I never realized how rooted the religion. Like I've always understood how Christianity itself has been used in cultural genocide, but I never understood the way in which the very religion itself was created on the basis of cultural genocide for the Mormon church. And I feel that is what this shows and proves to me. Now, connecting this to the Alexander Graham Bell um, thing. Alexander Graham Bell was all about making deaf people as hearing as possible, right? Those who believe as I do, the productive and defective race, you know what I'm saying? This line right here. Um, and then he also says, I think we'll all agree that the evidence shows a tendency to the formation of a deaf variety of the human race in America. What remedial measures can be taken to lessen or check this tendency? We shall consider the subject under two heads. One is repressive, two is the preventative measures. What the hell? Alexander Graham Bell. I wanted to do that earlier, but I forgot to. But anywho, fucking. I just hit my fucking knee. Fucking, So, Alexander Graham Bell was using family trees and researching families in order to better study how to eradicate deafness. Yes, as we've discussed, because he felt like everybody should be as hearing as possible. And he thought that the production of a deaf race, more deaf people just living, would be a great calamity to the world. So, his idea of changing the world was to eliminate deaf people, and that's where he was. Whereas with Zionism, their whole thing, with their purpose of compiling family trees is they are trying to create what they perceive as God's people, God's race. You know what I'm saying? So they are both trying to use breeding and the idea of how children are created to control communities through the compilation of family trees. That's what Alexander Graham Bell and that is what Mormon Church and FamilySearch.org has in common, on top of both being rooted in like with colonialism in general in the United States. I'm going to do um, another live about Alexander Graham Bell being tied to colonialism, because that would be like an entirely different fucking thing. Um, let's see here. But I'm just going to make sure I went through all of my sources I wanted to show you. I think we hit everything. No, we totally did. I need to remember to link this Zionist post that I just pulled up in here. So yeah, fucking thank you for processing all of that with me here today, because, this shit is a lot, you know what I mean? Um, and so within the colonialism of America and how they're both trying to create and control human race is a bit of a mind fuck. And I think it speaks to how intersectionality and oppression are intertwined, you know what I'm saying? And how, like, they're all connected, and forms of oppression come together in order to perpetuate itself. I don't know. But at the same time, I also believe the opposite is true, right? Like, community can come together in order to make things better, right? Because I honestly kind of feel like when we were discussing the schism between the Mormon Church in Utah and in the South, it's very similar. It's just another reminder, like, united we stand, divided we fall. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I'm going to wrap this bitch up because I know I've been talking. And I just really want to thank you guys for joining with me on this as we process it. I might end up doing eventually some type of follow up. I don't know. It's not guaranteed. I'm not gonna do another live for this just to do another live. But I just really feel like I haven't fully processed all that I could be getting out of this information, And so if or when I do fully process more of this information, I'm going to do another potential live on it. But I do definitely have planned another live on Alexander Graham Bell's tied to colonialism. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you very much, and I hope that you are having a good night. So.
No one is available to take your call. Please leave a message.
Thanks for watching. You might want to adjust the volume after all of this because a loud music is going to play. So yeah, adjust the volume. And then if you're coming to these lives anyway, I do have a loyalty program, yellowdeafchild.com/loyalty. If you sign up for my site as a member and you follow the check-in procedure, you can get points just for showing up to these lives anyway. So I just want to let you know about that. Yeah, I always have a really hard time saying goodbye because, you know, saying goodbye really just kind of feels like you're Tom Hanks. You know what I mean? Over here just like, welcome, Wilson. But anywho, yeah, so thank you for being here and goodbye.